right, I think we're ready to roll here today, folks. Jim Hart here, back at you with another edition of the Ask a Lawyer show. And today I've got three pretty awesome questions for you. I guess awesome is in the eye of the beholder, to be completely honest with you. But basically my questions are, what do you do if you're being stalked by your ex? I know this is something that's on all of your minds. The second question is, what if you did your own separation agreement and you didn't divide all your property? What do you do then? Number two. And number three is, what happens if you get in an auto accident and you're in an Uber at the time? Good questions? Let's roll with it. All right, so first question today is what do you do if you're being stalked by your ex? This is actually a question from a friend of mine, and basically the deal is, if you're being stalked, it really first of all depends on what the definition of stalking is. There is a statute on point in North Carolina that defines what stalking is, but it's one of those things where you know it if you've experienced it, because it can be really scary and make you feel really uncomfortable. And if you're the victim in a stalking case, it is probably one of the worst things that you can imagine. I remember back when I was in law school, I had a roommate who I think was borderline pretty mental. I remember one day I had come home from school and from the law school, and I'd forgotten to, let me back up a second. So he was a person that used to get up really, really early in the morning and to leave to go to the gym or whatever he did. And he would come home, and typically myself or my roommate would be out late at night, and because he got up so early, he wanted us to take his car and park it in our driveway because we lived in a little house. So he wanted us to back his car or pull his car into the driveway so that in the morning he could get up and get out without concern. Well, and the reason for that is because they ticketed our street at night if you were parked on the street. So one day, I or my roommate, we forgot to pull his car into the driveway when we got home, and he went off on us like nothing I've ever seen before. It was really scary, and I thought he was going to assault me, and it was not. From that day forward, I was scared of this guy. I didn't want to have any contact with him. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to talk to him. I got butterflies in my stomach just coming home. If you're going through a divorce situation, or you're breaking up with an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, and you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, because many of us have been there. Well, I imagine that a stalking situation would be very similar to that. You can't feel safe in your own home. So if you're in a situation where you don't feel safe in your own home because you've got an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend that you feel like is stalking you, then the appropriate thing to do is, number one, call the police. Make sure you get a record, get a police report down. If the stalking is bad enough, they might actually investigate and do something about that. Number two, go to the courthouse and get a domestic violence protective order. If you were in a dating relationship with somebody, that is a relationship that's going to qualify to allow you to get a protective order against this person, and I would highly recommend you do that. That's my little spiel on what to do if you're being stalked by an ex. This is one situation where I think it is important to protect you. Second question today, what do you do if you sign a separation agreement but it doesn't divide all of your property? So I had somebody call me this week because they had a separation agreement that they drafted on their own, and they, for some reason, did not divide their house. What do you do in that situation? Well, number one, you'd need an attorney to review the separation agreement to make sure it doesn't waive any rights. If it did waive rights, then you're going to have a problem, because one of the rights it can waive is the right to go to court to ask for an equitable distribution. And if you decide that you need to go to court but the separation agreement precludes it, then you're going to run into a catch-22. You're not going to be able to do that. So in those situations, you may need to go to court and ask for what's called a partition, where a court can order the sale of the property and divide it between you and your spouse if it's a home. Now, if it's not a house, if it's something else and you forgot to put in the separation agreement, typically you're basically going to be shit out of luck. I apologize for my language, but that's the deal. If you don't have it in the separation agreement, then it's not going to be divided. And basically, possession is 9/10 of the law, right? So if you left some clothes at the house and you said that your spouse gets the house with everything that's in it, you're going to have a problem. This is why it's really important to talk to a lawyer if you're going to be entering into a separation agreement, to make sure that you have accounted for every single piece of property that you have and you've divided it all appropriately before you enter that agreement. All right, number three, what happens if you're in an accident with an Uber or a Lyft or some other ride share? Well, in North Carolina, basically a couple things you need to know. Number one, there's not going to be much of a difference between if you're in an accident with an Uber driver or if you're in an accident and with just an ordinary run-of-the-mill car accident in North Carolina. There really is no difference. If you're in an accident with an Uber or Lyft or something like that, however, you do need to know that those companies have a $1 million liability policy in place. So if you are in an accident and the driver of the Uber is at fault and they don't have enough accident or they don't have enough insurance to protect you, then you could try and recover under Uber's umbrella liability policy, which goes up to $1 million. So that is something you need to know. That's really the only distinction. Everything else in terms of medical payments and fault and all that kind of stuff is going to stay intact. Now, the one thing I will tell you, if you are a passenger in a Lyft, then typically you're not going to be at fault unless, I'm sure there's some crazy scenario where you could theoretically be at fault because North Carolina is a contributory negligence state. If you're at fault, you're not going to be able to recover. But if you're a passenger in an Uber and you're just minding your own business and trying to get home and your Uber driver does something crazy and gets you in an accident and you're seriously injured, it's good to know that aside from whatever insurance the driver may have, there also is a $1 million umbrella policy in place to protect you. So that's basically what you need to know. All right, well, that's it for today. Hopefully you're having a great week. I'm getting a lot of great feedback to these videos. If you have questions, please head on over to jameshartlaw.com/contact and submit your question. I'd be happy to put it on the next episode next week. In the meantime, I would really appreciate it if you could give this video a thumbs up and hit the little alarm button so you get notified whenever we post videos on the YouTube. And that's it for today. Have a great day, folks. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe so you get access to new videos. Anyway, that's it. Have a good one, folks. Talk soon. Bye-bye.